Hello, BookTube. I've got an imagination-thrilling, book-budget-threatening bit of TBR torture for you today on a gray, overcast Thursday here in Boston. Very much threatening rain, and quite a few people. I have a whole network of people all on the eastern half of the United States to follow the weather. We compare weather notes with each other. A couple of you have joined that network, and all of those people are telling me that the storm system that is coming here tonight, that is going to bring rain tonight at sunset, everybody in that network is telling me that it's going to bring snow. I don't see it myself. The local weather here, the data that I've been able, I don't watch the news forecasts anymore because I've come to the conclusion that a lot of those weather forecasts on the networks, a lot of those people have been sort of subtly or maybe not so subtly told, the more dramatic you can make this, the better clicks it will give us. And the minute that enters the equation, I don't trust it, whether it's on YouTube or on the news. So instead, I look at the data. Fortunately, in the 21st century, the data is available to anybody. You can just look at it yourself and try to make a good guess. And one of the best ways I have found to guess what the data means is to connect with people on the ground who are telling me what it's doing in their area. And all of those people are saying snow. A light dusting of snow. I don't get that impression. So I guess this time tomorrow we'll tell the tale. But I've got a stack of books to show you here. The first one, two, three, four, five. The first five. I've got five that I have read in one way or another, and five that I haven't read. And we'll just go through them all together, and I'll show you all these goodies. And the first one is the only. I'm making a couple of exceptions for nonfiction November. I am trying to read mostly nonfiction in nonfiction November, and that's not hard. That's not hard at all. But I made a couple of exceptions in this case. One exception, of course, is children's books. They're all fiction, and yet I don't want to give them up even for a month. And the other exception you'll see. The first one is a children's book. It's a board book, so it's chewable. It's dunkable, it's kick-aroundable, and it's really good. It's written by Moritz Petz, and it's illustrated by Amelie Jakowski, and it's called The Bad Mood. It's a board book about a little badger who wakes up in a bad mood and goes out and about in his neighborhood, and when he meets, a raccoon, and the raccoon is trying to be nice to him, he is angry when he meets all the other animals that he meets in the course of his little perambulation in the woods. He basically tells to take a hike because he's in a bad mood and he's indulging himself. And then he goes home and works in his garden for a while. It was a little bit of a needling thing to Steve. There's another mention of how nice it is to keep a garden. He works in his garden with the beautiful sky overhead and the sun on his back and starts to feel better, which is the universal thing that I've heard from people about keeping a garden, even a small one, is that the work in the garden is exhausting, surprisingly exhausting and dirty, but that it makes you feel better. When you're finished with it, you feel better. Okay, so duly noted. Maybe this spring I will keep a garden. But once he starts to feel better, he immediately goes out and about into the woods to say hi to people, and no one is around. When he finds people, they are in a bad mood. His bad mood has caught on to them, and he has to come up with a strategy for how to fix that. A helpful crow, helps him with a strategy to fix that. It's utterly delightful. I don't know. I mean, it's for kids. I wonder if this says what age group this is for. I'm always terrible at that. No. Okay, it doesn't. I don't really know. These sorts of things myself. I have no idea. But even if it's a young kid that you're just reading it to, they can't read on their own. It's still not, and it's never too early to talk to a kid about bad moods because they happen to everybody. So anyway, that is the first one of the stack that I have read, and it didn't take long. It only took a few seconds. So and there's another piece of fiction in the red stack, but these are all more or less recommends. This next one is a wholehearted recommend. It's coming out in paperback, I think, soon, or it might be out already, a $16 paperback in your bookstores. This is Words Are My Matter, Writing on Life and Books, by the late, great Ursula Le Guin. And it's terrific. A lot of these things had their birth as blog posts or addresses, various things that you wouldn't have. It's good to have them collected. There are some ruminations on books and authors, but there are also ruminations on the book publishing industry, on writing just in general. It's just wonderful. It makes you wish that the author were back among us, that she'd never left. Like, for instance, there's a blog post that was originally called "The Death of the Book," and it starts off with classic sort of Mandarin humor. People love to talk about the death of whatever, the book or history or nature or God or authentic Cajun cuisine. Eschatologically minded people do, anyway. After I wrote that, I felt pleased with myself, but uneasy. I went and looked up eschatological. I knew it didn't mean what scatological means, even though they sound very much alike, but I thought it had to do only with death. I didn't realize that it concerns not only one thing, but the four last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. If it included scatology, it would practically be the whole ball of wax. And this is, I've read this already. I read this when it came out last year, but I'm very happy to reread it and to recommend it to you. I don't know if I always forget if it actually showed up on this channel, but if it did, or if it didn't, either way, I'm recommending it to you. Then the next one, the next book on the red pile is fiction. And I confess, I reread a chunk of it. The main reason I want to show it to you is because it's an example of something that we don't often see. And so I want to show it to you. I want to praise it as an example of that thing, and maybe get the word out to publishing houses that this is the way it's supposed to be done. This is something that I kind of hoped would happen. In December, there's coming out a new movie, a new adaptation of Louisa May Alcott's Little Women. I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to do a huge amount of business. I think that it's paradoxically going to be the launch into superstardom for Timothée Chalamet, one of the few men in the cast. So I think it's going to be Titanic all over again, where young women and young men are just going to go to see it over and over and over again. I could be wrong about that, but all the signs point to me to say that it's going to be a launch pad for. I mean, he's already famous. He's already got half of Hollywood lining him up for any project under the sun. But I think so was Leonardo DiCaprio when Titanic came out. I think this will, if I'm right, this will launch him into just being a phenomenon, just an absolutely evil, world-encompassing phenomenon. And when I knew that Little Women was coming out, I was hoping that it would cause all sorts of reprints or reissuings of old editions of Little Women. And that's only to the good for all of us. And it turns out that the official adaptation, the official book, ordinarily, I mean, you hear that, the official movie version of the book, you probably wince. Most book people do, because the official movie version or TV version of a book is usually outstandingly ugly. Just an outstandingly ugly thing. Whether it's the out of focus publicity still that's used for the cover illustration, or the little island of color publicity stills that are inserted in the middle of the book, or whatever. And this is not that. This is a keeper of a thing. This is how Amulet Books did it. They did it like this. So you have a leather hardcover, with a naked hardcover with just this wraparound thing on it. So this tells you that it's an adaptation of the movie, but you don't need it. You can just take it right off. It's a silly piece of advertising, so you can just take it right off. And instead of the inset of black and white photos, the creators of this particular edition, or instead of an inset of color photos, they give us black and white photos that feel more period appropriate, and they set them off in a border, in a framed border, instead of sticking them as an island in the middle of the book. So they're even faded just a little, so that they actually do feel like they belong in the book. I mean, yes, you've got recognizable actor and actress faces in these pictures, but they feel like they could fit. They feel like they'd be part of a Little Women book anyway. And I think that's just wonderful. I think that's just wonderful. I think this is a lesson, a perfect template for publishers of all kinds. If you have a book coming out that's a movie coming out that's adapted from a treasured book, do it like this. Don't take the cheap route. Do it like this. Where there's no reason that the movie adaptation book that you're studio machinery insist you bring out, there's no reason that has to lose you money. It can be something that people want to buy if you do it right. and this is a way to do it right. You can keep this if you want, but it's easily discardable. It's not part of the cover, locking this book forever into this interpretation. And the pictures on the inside are easily universal. You can easily think of them as universal. I'd really like it if everybody would do something like that, but most of them don't. This is out at the same time as this thing, the big companion to the movie that gives us all the requisite behind the scenes photos, profiles of the actors and actresses involved, breakdown of the photography and the sets and the costumes, and also at the back, a little alarmingly, a collection of recipes, a collection of recipes from 150 years ago. I guess to tempt your taste budgets, what the March sisters might have eaten. So this Little Women, it counts. I'm putting it in the pile of stuff that I've already read. I read a chunk of it when I got this edition, and I recommend this edition. It's going to be in your bookstores anyway, and it's rare for me to be able to recommend an official companion to a movie, an official tie-in to a movie. Usually those are so ugly. In this case, no. So good. Then this next one is Biography. It's coming out in November. I am going to be reviewing it for the Christian Science Monitor. I have already read it. It is terrific. It is terrific. This is by Leandra Ruth Zarnow, and it is Battling Bella. It is the latest book about Bella Abzug, who was an elected politician, a firebrand, an advocate of all sorts of socially progressive issues that are still with us today, that are still being fought for today, that still have only marginal progress today, and also an outsized personality. She was infinitely quotable and funny and rough. She is a feminist icon that fourth wave, shaved side of the head, blue-haired young feminists today have never even heard of course, because they've not heard of any feminist icons. So all they know is catchphrases and rote cant. So they don't know anything about the actual people that blazed the trail so that they could be where they are. That's annoying, but at least despite the fact that is the case all over the United States and especially on college campuses, at least we're still getting books about the real deal. And this is the real deal. So, and it's also the author is definitely in Bella Abzug's camp, and I myself think ideally you don't want your biographer to be in anybody's camp, but she keeps it even. You get the whole picture, which is really nice. She also has a great ear for quotes. She zooms right in on quotes. She gets the standout dramatic moments perfectly done. So I'll be writing about this. Unfortunately, with a case like this where I could go on and on, I only have 800 and so words. That's a killer, but I'll make do. And then the last of the books that I have read is a recent reread. I read the advanced copy that I got that's on the shelf behind me, and then I got the finished copy. I reread the whole thing. The advanced copy, I read bits and pieces I picked here and there just to get a flavor for it. The finished copy, I read the whole thing. And this is a perfect example, one of the greatest examples I can think of that divide that we see in my library tours, where I will love an author's nonfiction, especially their occasional nonfiction, the stuff that's written on deadline at 800 words for money, and hate their fiction. And this is a perfect example of that. One of the biggest examples of that. This is Nabokov. And this is a lovely new hardcover thing from Knopf. Think, Write, Speak. It's a collection of previously unanthologized deadline prose. So you've got speeches, you've got letters to the editor, you've got prefaces, you've got scattered through all throughout here book reviews that are really, really good. I always forget. I've read a lot of Nabokov's nonfiction. I always forget what a brutal and good book reviewer he was. It's one of the things you have to worry about if you're an author or an editor. Really, one of the things you have to worry about in a way is that if the person you send a book to and you ask for a review of it is a big fish on their own, in other words, they don't need you and they don't need the goodwill of the industry and they don't have to worry about the person they pan criticizing them behind their back at some little Brooklyn literary launch. If they're a big fish already, then they can just completely speak their mind about your book. And that is usually bad news because most books are terrible. It's Sturgeon's Law, right? 90% of everything is crud. It was a delight, absolute delight. There are a lot of the things that he writes about here, talks about, and reviews have long since gone, and quite a few of them I don't know anything about. So I was mainly delighting in just the way Nabokov writes, which is not something you'll ever hear me say about his fiction, but his nonfiction, yes. So that is the first half of this terrifying Tyrannosaurus Rex TBR torture. Those are the 5 that I have read. Now I want to show you 5 that I haven't read, but that are on the docket. They're on the launch pad, so I'll be reading them immediately. The first one's a tiny little thing. This is by Carly Simon, and it's called Touched by the Sun. And it's about her friendship with Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Of course, the friendship is linked by the reason why I got the book, and I will be reviewing it, and you can guess already where I'll be reviewing it. Their friendship is linked by Martha's Vineyard, island off the coast of Massachusetts that is home to vacation homes for the wealthy, and Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis and Carly Simon are 2 of the most famous people in recent years to associate themselves with Martha's Vineyard. So I'll be reviewing this for the Vineyard Gazette, a wonderful broadsheet newspaper on the island where I am the book reviewer. It's a tiny little thing. It'll take an hour to read. I will then cross-check it, cross-reference it with a couple of other things. There's a small group of books written by various people about what I think of as Jackie O in winter. These people who knew her later in her life when all the fanfare was over and she was just herself. There are a couple of books about her as an editor, as a book editor, a couple of other books about people who had late in life friendships with her. I have a lot of those. I want to refresh my memory on some of the commonalities of them, and then read this. I don't really know that Carly Simon wrote this, so we'll see. I imagine that 5 pages will tell me whether or not she did, or whether or not she had help. I'll go to her acknowledgments first. If she had help, she'll acknowledge it. So that is the first thing, and it's a nice thing because, like Battling Bella, it's not just a read, it's also a job. It's also work, and I love my job. And there's also something extra special about appearing in a small town newspaper, which is essentially what the Vineyard Gazette is, no matter how many multimillionaires read it, and also appearing in a newspaper, in paper, in print, which doesn't always happen anywhere else, right? I sometimes I write for a whole bunch of places, and sometimes the content just goes on the website. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Any idea from 20 years ago that there was 2 tiers, I think, has largely gone. Most people become aware of book reviews because of links on social media sites like Instagram or Twitter. And when it comes to that, what difference does it make if it was ever in a printed page that smudges on your fingers? I don't think it does make any difference. Certainly, an enterprise like Open Letters Review, where I am the editor and we run reviews all the time, is based on that assumption. It's based on the assumption that it doesn't matter, that you're going to be reading this in electronic format anyway. That's the main exceptions for me for that. I guess the National in Abu Dhabi, I guess that my work appears there in print. I've never seen a copy of the National, only online, and that's been a long time, so that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. The other 2 examples would be the Christian Science Monitor and the Martha's Vineyard Gazette, where there are print versions, I never see a difference in readership, in reader responses, emails that I get. I never see a difference. It never seems to make a difference. I really think that it's the same. So I don't know. This will be appearing in the newspaper, and the Vineyard Gazette, I think, also has all this stuff online. I've never actually checked. I'll have to find out. I'm assuming that they do, because I've linked to some of my pieces on social media. I really ought to do all of that. I ought to link to everything that I write on all the social media where I am. I really ought to do that. I wouldn't do it if any of you thought it was obnoxious, but you don't. And there are a lot of people on those social media platforms where I am that aren't in the audience of this BookTube channel, and that might want to know what I write and where it is and what I thought. I really ought to get in the habit of doing that. 2020, that will be something that I would hope that I will address, is that I really ought to do that more often. I have to do that, and I ought to pay more attention to Goodreads. Put all of my reviews on Goodreads as well, or link to them anyway. I said that last year and the year before that, but I will keep at it. This next one is Espionage. It's nonfiction. It's Espionage. We've seen a lot of these. This is sort of World War II or post-World War II keyhole history, one person, one mission, that sort of thing. I like them very much. This is by Robert Hutton, and it's called Agent Jack, the true story of MI5's secret Nazi hunter. Agent Jack, look at that. Snowbound London Bridge. And this comes out, I think, in the middle of the month. I think these are all November books. Yeah, this comes out in the middle of the book. The never-before-told true-life story based on newly declassified documents and private family archives. In June of 1940, Hitler's army had taken Europe, and its sights were set on Britain. Churchill's message to his nation was to resist the Nazis, and it seemed that all of Britain stood behind him. By 1942, however, MI5 had convinced that Germans had a network of British citizens working for them, ready to assist an impending invasion. The trouble was they could never find any evidence of an organized group, and this book is all about that. And it's apparently breaking lots of new ground, so a lot of the stuff I will not have read before, even hinting. So it's on the docket. Then we have, I think this is a November book as well. This is all too relevant. This is pointedly relevant. This is Buster Benson's book, Why Are We Yelling? The Art of Productive Disagreement, which is in scarce supply in 2019. What have we got here? Nowadays, it feels impossible to disagree with someone without the interaction ending in either awkward standoff or shouting match, leaving feelings of resentment and broken relationships in its wake. Well, it's not true on this channel, but it's largely true in the outside world. This has led to a culture of repressed emotions, closed-mindedness, and terrible arguing habits. Yelling is exhausting, and the trap of unproductive disagreement will never end until we learn how to argue effectively. So it's a thin little thing. It won't take long to do. Most of these won't take long to do. And I'm all for it. I'm all for learning, what this author has to say. Who is this author? Who is Buster Benson? He's young, of course. He's an entrepreneur and a former product leader at Amazon, Twitter, Slack, and Patreon. And he's now CEO of 750words.com. And this is his first book. Okay, so why are we yelling? I will find out why we are yelling. This next one's going to seem familiar to a lot of you. You're going to remember it from earlier in this year. No idea what's causing this little fad. but this one's even more prominent. This is Mary Ball Washington, the untold story of George Washington's mother. And in this case, it's by Craig Shirley, who's written half a dozen. He's written a few quite good books on Ronald Reagan. They're partisan books in their way. Grain of salt books, but still really good. And this is his book on George Washington's mother. And we've already seen that. We've already seen a book early in this year, I believe it was, with an author trying to renovate the reputation of George Washington's famously insufferable mother. So I read that earlier book. What's it called? Madam Washington, I think, something like that. I read that earlier book. I waited until I got the finished copy. I read the author's argument, and then I scoured its references, what the author based her arguments on. And it was not convincing. It was not convincing at all. And those sources haven't changed in 9 months. Those sources haven't changed. Craig Shirley can't be working with anything that earlier author, I forget her name, wasn't working on. So I don't expect this book to convince me any more than the last one did, and I might have to just address it in a review. I might have to write about it. We shall see. We shall see. The previous book on George Washington's mother said that she was criminally misunderstood and hinted that there was a sexist reason why, a misogynistic reason why she was criminally misunderstood. That didn't hold any water with me any more than any of the other justifications in that book. We shall see what this author has to say is the reason why history has a firm opinion of this woman. We shall see. I have given up thinking that these books will change my mind, but I'm kind of hoping that even if this one does change my mind, I'm kind of hoping that we're done with Mary Ball Washington. I'm hoping there are no more renovations of her next year. And then we have the last book of the ones that I haven't read that I'll be reading is an amazing thing. I knew vaguely about this story, and I guess in the back of my mind I was just kind of waiting for a book. And here's the book. This is by Eve Kahn, and it's called Forever Seeing New Beauties. The Forgotten Impressionist Mary Rogers Williams, whose dates are 1857 to 1907. and this is an oversized book from Wesleyan University Press, heavily illustrated with not only the artwork of the artist involved, the lost impressionist, but also with all kinds of archival photos of pencil sketches that she did, and also the people and places in her life. So a really big, ornate thing. And the reason that I heard about it in the news is because I wonder if this is going to say, yes, in 2012, that's not that long ago, the artist's confessional letters and hundreds of her paintings and sketches turned up in storage in a Connecticut family home. Her first biography reveals her as witty, self-deprecating, caustically critical of mainstream art, and observant of everything from soldiers' epaulettes to the colorful produce layered on delivery trucks. And that's a fairly amazing thing to have this person, every artist of her age knew her, to have a massive trove of first-hand stuff, including paintings, turn up so late is amazing. And I imagine that quite a bit of this book is going to be those autobiographical sketches, those journals. I imagine that'll be quite a lot of what's in here. So I'm all for it. I can't wait to learn all about this person who would have gone largely unknown had that cachet of stuff not appeared. So there you go. That is a terrifying Thursday TBR torture. We have should I do a Steve file? Do I dare? We have Forever Seeing New Beauties, a new life of Mary Rogers Williams, the so-called forgotten impressionist. Then we have Mary Ball Washington by Craig Shirley, another book trying to renovate the reputation of George Washington's mother. And we have Why Are We Yelling, a book that proposes new ways to argue with each other. I imagine a lot of those new ways will be old ways, pre-internet ways. Then Agent Jack, about British citizens helping the Nazis prior to what they thought was going to be a cross-channel invasion. Then Touched by the Sun, in which Carly Simon reminisces about her time with Jackie O on the island of Martha's Vineyard. Then Think, Write, Speak, a big, fat, heavy, nicely produced collection of occasional writings by Nabokov, whose fiction I can't stand, but his nonfiction I generally tend to like. Then we have Battling Bella, a new political biography of a political firebrand for her day, and a figure who's not well enough known in 2019. So the idea that in November there's going to be a biography of her in bookstores right in time for Christmas, that makes Steve smile. Then a movie tie-in hardcover of Little Women that is actually nice. It is actually well done. It's solidly put together. It's the publicity stills for the movie have been artfully rearranged to enhance the value of the book, to enhance the look, the aesthetic of the book, and the idiotic publicity still color photo cover is removable. And then we've got Words Are My Matter, more occasional stuff. First we have Nabokov, now we have Ursula Le Guin. This is a reprint. This is coming out this month. And finally, The Bad Mood. A little badger's in a bad mood until he finds a way to turn it around. So there's some Thursday TBR torture for you. And I will wrap this up. We've gone way too long, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.